Hi, Cliff Brake from Beck Systems. This screencast is a demonstration of how to use InfluxDB and Grafana with Simple IoT. InfluxDB is a time series database, so we can store our historical data there. And Grafana provides very advanced graphing and dashboarding capabilities, so we can provide graphs and ways to view our data that we stored in Influx. First thing we need to do is install Simple IoT. So we are going to download the latest version. If we go to simpleiot.org and click on the project, click on the latest version, download the Linux x86 version. Okay, Simple IoT is running on port 8118, so let's go to the browser, log in. I'm going to add a Shelly node, and this will give us a bunch of nodes with data that we can then plot. So this is just to get us some sample data. Okay, this plug is hooked up to our whole house fan. You can see it gives us some power and voltage, current metrics. So that's what we'll be plotting. Okay, next let's install Grafana and InfluxDB. So I'm running Arch Linux, so Pacman is the package manager, but whatever distribution you're running, you can download packages or install them. Arch packages the latest Influx and Grafana, so it's nice for us developers. Okay, so now let's start both of them. And let's check the status to make sure they're both running. Okay, and then we'll just restart Simple IoT. So now let's log into our local instances of InfluxDB and Grafana. So Influx runs at port 8086, just like the old Intel processors. And it gives you a welcome screen. You can create an account. Give it initial org name as Simple IoT, bucket Simple IoT. Now this is if you select Quick Start, it's going to populate your default bucket with a bunch of test metrics, which I don't want this time, so I will do Advanced. Okay, now if we click on the Simple IoT bucket, we should notice there's no data in there except a few monitoring things. Let's go back to buckets and set up an API token. And let's create a custom API token. And for the Simple IoT bucket, we'll give it read-write. Copy it to our clipboard. Then back in Simple IoT, we're going to add a database node. And this is what allows us to connect to InfluxDB. Call this InfluxDB. Simple IoT, and then we're going to paste in the token. So if we save this and go back to here, oops, I spelled the bucket wrong, so let's do that. Okay, so it says Influx, setting up Influx API. So if you don't see any error messages after that, things are probably good. So now if we go back over to Influx, and if we view our buckets, notice there's now some points flowing into this measurement. So let's select that. We want to plot the value. And let's filter on the node ID. So in Simple IoT, every node has an ID. We can get that ID easily by clicking the copy button. I'm going to copy the node ID for this plug, which is has the data we want to plot. So we'll paste it into here. Select that node, and then let's just plot the power data. Now, if we can see the power data is now being displayed, and looks like we're running around 500 watts for this fan we're running. So the InfluxDB Data Explorer has a nice query builder where you can interactively discover your data. You can also view a script editor view, which is the raw influx query. So now let's go to Grafana, and that runs on port 3000. So welcome to Grafana, and I believe the default login is admin, and then it'll prompt you to change the password, so we'll just change that. Okay, the first thing we need to do in Grafana is hook up a data source. So let's go to Administration, Data Source. Oops, wrong one. Okay, very important. You need to select Flux for the query language versus InfluxQL. So Flux is what they use in 2.0. So let's hook up the URL. So the only thing you need here is the URL and then the details down here. So let's do Simple IoT, our token, and default bucket. So we'll click Save and Test. This will test it. Oops. Let's see. Unauthorized access reading the buckets. So we got this right. Let's just recopy the auth key. Okay, it's working now. I must have the wrong one in my clipboard. So the next thing we want to do is create a new dashboard. Let's go to New Dashboard, and so we want to select InfluxDB. So there's several ways we can do this. One of the easiest ways I found is to do the sample query, simple query, and then just fill in stuff. We can also just go back over to the Data Explorer and copy this query directly. Over to Grafana. Now if we click somewhere, let's look at the last 5 minutes. Yep, we've got power data. So if we want to add another trace, we can the easiest way to do that is to duplicate this query using this button, and then let's say maybe we want to graph voltage. Now we have two traces, one for power and one for voltage. The labels aren't very nice. One way to clean that up is to add an override. So let's add an override property and just search for display. Call this power. And then let's add an override for the second one. Display and voltage. Okay, the last thing we might want to do is put the voltage on the right y-axis instead of the left, because these are different metrics on different scales. It might be useful for each of them to have its own scale so we can see more detail. So let's add another override property, axis, placement right. Okay, now our voltage is shown over on the right y-axis and our power is on the left. So again, in Grafana you can easily add more graphs. We can, if we want to add another graph, sometimes it's easy just to duplicate an entire panel. Let's give this one a label. We'll apply that. And then on this one we might want to, let's say we want to display current. This gives you a sense for how you can use Grafana and InfluxDB with Simple IoT. Here's an example of a dashboard I use to monitor several of the systems I run. So we're using Simple IoT on various servers to collect metrics, and that's an easy thing to do. In Simple IoT you just add a metrics node, and that'll allow you to start collecting metrics for the computer Simple IoT is running on. So this is just a bunch of graphs of different metrics. Allows me to keep track of my servers and monitor what they're doing. We can set alerts and so on. Anyway, that's how to use InfluxDB and Grafana with Simple IoT. Hope that helps. Thanks.